You know, it's been a while since I've heard about Hobo Joe. I sometimes wonder how he's been holding up lately. Well, I'll just check on him to see how he's going. Hey Hobo Joe, sorry if I'm interrupting you or anything, but I was just wondering... Okay. I'm not going to ask where you got those. But what in the hell are you doing? Oh, I was just, prepping myself for the future, that's all. By buying a shit ton of toilet paper? Yeah. But you can't really go, nothing wrong with that. Look, if it's about the situation that's been happening around the world, you don't need to worry about that too much. As long as you keep washing your hands often and keeping clean, you'll be just fine. Oh. Right. So, mind if I ask what you're going to do with all those toilet papers? I mean, you could give them to other people that may desperately need it. I know what I could do! Oh yeah? I'll build a cubby house made out of toilet paper. Okay, I know it seems different that I'm making this type of video, but I don't know. I mean, one day you're pondering on new ideas for future videos, then the next thing you know, you're about to be ranking nearly every Crash Bandicoot game on tier list. Well, it was either this or a Fortnite video. You're probably glad I chose this over Fortnite. So because I couldn't be bothered for a review this time around, why not do something completely new and somewhat unoriginal since everyone else has done one before, and make a tier list video. Don't expect this to be around every month or so, this will probably be uploaded for special occasions only. So we're going to be ranking almost every single Crash Bandicoot game. Our focus for this video is going to be on the main Crash games on consoles. My apologies to the handheld systems. There are some handhelds on this list, and while I haven't played them at all, I'll still rank them, but only on fan receptions only. This was the best list I can find with little to no handheld games, so don't judge me. The main reason why I wanted to make a tier list video is because sometimes our opinion about a certain video game or series can indeed change, for the better or for the worst. And since Crash Bandicoot will always be my little orange fluffy boy persona, and since I reviewed the Crash Bandicoot series on consoles, I figure why not go back to the past Crash games I've checked out, see if my opinions have altered in any shape or form, and finally rank them. So sit tight everybody, because we're about to enter our new dimension! Well, there was supposed to be 2 dimensions, but we ran out of time. So here we are, our tier list for this video. There are 5 sections in this setup. There is no masterpiece because there is no such thing as a flawless video game, and there's no 7 out of 10s, 5 out of 10s, and so forth, because that method has been done to death, and I'm glad I'm no longer scoring games. In this list, you have great, good, average, mediocre, and the shit stuff. The shit stuff! And trust me, you do not want to be in the shit stuff. I mean, have you seen WWE's booking decisions lately? So, now that everything has been covered, I think, let's go all the way back to 1996 with Crash Bandicoot, the very first Crash Bandicoot game that I actually started playing until 2017. And I called myself a Crash Bandicoot fan. So a team of Naughty Dogs went ahead to create the first Crash game for the PlayStation 1, and let me tell ya, even though this game is still outdated thanks to its sequels, it's still a pretty fun game to come back to. It has a unique charm that just makes this game enjoyable. The story was pretty simple, even though it kinda was comparable to Super Mario when you think about it. The soundtrack is bouncy and quite catchy to listen, the level designs are nice to look at, and while it can be challenging at times and the controls aren't exactly the tightest I've experienced in a 3D platformer, I had a good time playing this game. So since this was the very first Crash game, I will give it the benefit of the doubt. So with that said, Crash Bandicoot is a good game. So now you know how this video will work out until the end, let's move on to Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. This game to me is the perfect sequel in my opinion. All it does is take the formula and improve the errors that needed fixing. The controls are more better, different variety of levels, and the bosses are a one step forward comparing to the first Crash game. Even if Cortex does suck as the final boss. And plus, being able to save the game whenever you want to gets huge bonus points for me. This is my favorite game of all time and no other game will ever take its place. So with that said, Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back is a great game. Up next to complete the trilogy is Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. Now you're either a Crash 2 fan or a Crash 3 fan because both games are really different to each other. While I'm on the side of Crash 2, but I still love playing Warped. Naughty Dog always finds a way to make each game pleasurable, and indeed, this game is just that. The level designs are even more creative than Crash 2, the soundtrack is just as great as always, and this game features some cool power-ups to keep the series as a whole more interesting. I will say though that Crash 3 does go a tiny bit overboard with the vehicle levels, but as long as they play well, which they do, then I have little to no complaints. Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped is a great game. Highly recommend getting the trilogy if you have the spare cash to spend. Next up is CTR Crash Team Racing. Now it sounds bizarre on paper to go from a 3D platformer to a racing game, but Crash Team Racing is possibly one of the best kart racing games of all time. Even better than Mario Kart. Let's run a checklist. Does it feature some of the most tightest controls in a kart racing game? Check. Is the racetracks fun to race on? Check. And does it include some memorable music to race with that keeps you engaged as you accelerate to the finish line? Check. I don't think I need to explain why this game is awesome because you probably already know that answer already. And even though it's a bit of a shame that we couldn't play as Oxide on this PlayStation 1 title, but honestly, it didn't bother me that much because of how much fun I've had. CTR Crash Team Racing is a great game. Now so far, we've had one good game and 3 great games in a row. Wow. Can we keep it up with 4 in a row? Up next is Crash Back. Oh fuck. Now, is this the worst Crash game in this list? No, not really. But is this a great Crash game overall? No, not really. It's up to here where Universal Interactive Studios saw Crash Bandicoot as a rival to Mario, so of course they wanted to have a Crash Party game. It's an okay video game, but I wouldn't say I had a fantastic time with it. I did enjoy the variety of different minigames and the small character roster you can play as. Seriously, who the hell is Rillaru? But the minigames to me are not that interesting to play. And plus in adventure mode, the difficulty really spikes up, so it can be hard at some cases, and an unfair winning system where you have to win 3 times in a single game. So you can actually get stuck in one game for way too long. I'll only play it if I had friends around, but it's not fun playing it by yourself. Crash Bash is an average game. Next up is Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of My Childhood, The Wrath of Cortex. This was the first Crash game on PlayStation 2, so all eyes were on this installment. And was it a success? Well, it did got a platinum release, but this game to me overall is okay, but nothing too special. I think the biggest problem this game has is there are so many vehicle levels, and most of them are not enjoyable to play. And for the fact that this was a 3D platform game, but yet they're shoving this down my throat is just awful. And they do copy the elements of Crash 3 over to this game, and the Wrath of Cortex doesn't do anything unique with it. And even if they do try something different, like walking on nitros for example, but it turns out to be a gimmick rather than a power-up. While I do enjoy the OST of this game, and some of the levels are somewhat pleasurable to play, but this is not a great Crash game by any means. Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of Cortex is an average game. Now it's time to check out the Game Boy Advance games. From this list, it looks like we'll be looking at 2 of them for this video. Now, I don't have gameplay footage, so I'll have to do the next big idea and show pictures instead. So that's fun. I could just take someone else's footage, but that's not my style. Up first is Crash Bandicoot, A Huge Adventure. From what I've gathered, it's an okay Game Boy Advance game. While it doesn't do anything different or exciting, it plays it very simple and straight to the point. So from the fan reception, Crash Bandicoot A Huge Adventure is an average game. But Crash Bandicoot 2 Entrance is a different ball game. In a good way, of course. This time around, they brought in new and fresh ideas to the table, and for the most part, it works out well. Apparently, and here's a fun fact, that Dr. Cortex is not in this game. Sounds strange, but it turns out to be good in the end, as we were presented with a new mastermind in Entrance. This was a major improvement over the first game, and for that reason, Crash Bandicoot 2 Entrance is a good game. Now in the next Crash game, oh you better get your trigger fingers ready because here's an unpopular opinion. Well, maybe, I don't know, but I personally cannot stand Crash Nitro Kart. Oh, it's the action pack. I mean, you have all the 3 Crash games, but Nitro Kart's there. Oh wait, hold on a second, I'll just see if I can fiddle this around. Yeah, this one, I can't stand this one! Now don't ask why, this is just a personal opinion of mine. For some reason as a kid, I could never get into Nitro Kart at all. And this was coming from a boy who loved Crash Bandicoot. I will say that the graphics are so much better than the Wrath of Cortex, that's for damn sure. But I think the reason why I didn't enjoy Nitro Kart as much is because of how many times I compared this game to Crash Team Racing. The controls were slippery, the racetracks were not as fun to me, and the story I felt was forgettable. I will admit that my review on Nitro Kart was too biased, and I definitely could have handled it a bit better. I can see it as an okay game, it just wouldn't be my first choice for a racing game. Crash Nitro Kart is an average game. Next up is Crash Twinsanity. Now there's 2 types of Crash fans. You either love Twinsanity or you hate Twinsanity. I'm on the opinion of loving this game. The soundtrack sounds great, I enjoy the more open world theme instead of warping into a level, and this game is extremely hilarious at times. But however, I can understand why fans would hate this game. Twinsanity does throw you in different types of gameplay to a point where it becomes a mess, the bosses for the most part are straightforward and nothing interesting happens, and this game is a pretty short experience. Like your peanut! But since I enjoyed this game, Crash Twinsanity is a good game. Next up is Crash Tag Team Racing. A game that sounds really good on paper, having a mixture of platforming and racing seems awesome, but the execution was not that great. The platforming was average at best, the hub worlds wasn't that interesting, and the enemy types was nothing but penguins and more penguins. As for racing goes, again, it's not that great. The racetracks are forgettable, and this game is pretty easy, even in hard mode. All you do is transform with Nina or Engine, use their weapons, and you're good to go. It's just not a fantastic game. So with that said, Crash Tag Team Racing is a mediocre game. The next game we're checking out is Crash Boom Bang for the Nintendo DS. So, how did it turn out? Well, it's actually one of the worst Crash games of all time. It's in the shit stuff. Next up is Crash of the Titans. Now apparently this is a pretty controversial video game due to the change in direction. We went from a 3D platformer to a 3D beat 'em up game. Or the best way to describe it is if Crash Bandicoot became the God of War. It does sound interesting, but playing this game is not really that fun. Some of the models look way off, and I'm still baffled about Tiny Tiger's voice. I mean, the gameplay is okay, the story is okay, but there's nothing fun about this game at all. It's not a good Crash Bandicoot game by any means, but is this a good beat 'em up game? Well, no. Crash of the Titans is a mediocre game. Next up is Crash Mind Over Mutants, the second installment of the Titans series. This time around, the gameplay and fighting style has been improved, and I'll even say that Embryo was probably the best character in the game. There is, however, one terrible thing about this game, and it really suffers, and that is the amount of backtracking. There's just so much backtracking to the point where I'm getting really sick and tired of going back and forth all the time. Overall, it is an improvement over Crash of the Titans, but again, it's nothing special. Crash Mind Over Mutants is an average game. So after Mind Over Mutants, we didn't get a new Crash game until many years later with Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. 3 original Crash games remade from the ground up. This is just an incredible remake in my opinion. Everything that you know and love about those games is right there in your fingertips. And even if I did had a few problems about this game, they were thankfully corrected due to the patch that fixed up the issues this game had, with much faster loading times and even presenting a brand new level. This is honestly the best remake I've ever played, and as you would expect, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy is a great game. And now this brings us to the very last game for this list, and that would be Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. Now I have recently reviewed this game, but I'll try not to repeat myself. Once again, this is a beautifully faithful remake about one of the best kart racing games from the PlayStation 1 era. It's just what you would expect, and they also added in online multiplayer, which is extremely fun. And not forgetting to mention the monthly Grand Prix with new racetracks and new characters to unlock is really a nice touch. And yeah, it still sucks that they have to put in microtransactions in here, which is never fun in a video game. But if I can ignore that one issue, this is an awesome racing game. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled is a great game. And with that said, here's my list and what I think about the Crash Bandicoot series. At the end of the day, it'll always be my favorite video game series. It's what I grew up with. Sure, some of them are not exactly the best quality games out there, but there are some cool hidden gems and some standalone classics that still holds up to this very day. Reviewing this series was the reason why I started making videos in the first place, and I owe the Crash Bandicoot series everything for it. So if you ever come across any of the good Crash games, try them out. And sure, even the worst of the worst as well, as they do have a place in the video gaming industry. Some of you may wonder why I'm not giving out my opinion on Crash and Spyro Fusion for the Game Boy Advance, and that's because I'm saving it for a future video down the line. Oh, rest in peace, my beautiful soul, when I get to that game. Do you remember how I said that Crash Bandicoot 2 is my favorite game and no other game can replace it? Well, there is one game that nearly did, and we'll be talking about that game next time. Now, to be completely honest, I have no idea how to end this video. Well, I suppose I could do the Crash dance, but that'll be cringy as hell. But since I'm into cringy stuff,